Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, How to Adopt a Baby, an Introduction to Infant Adoption. My name is Kim King, and I'm here with Heather Featherston, and we are with Lifetime Adoption, a licensed child-placing agency working nationwide to connect adoptive parents and birth parents and help guide each entity forward step by step to the completion of your family through adoption. So we're excited to speak with you today all about the process, and we know how helpful this information will be. We'll be with you for the next 60 minutes. Heather, thank you for being with me, and thank you for the great slideshow.
I'm happy to be here, Kim. I love webinars, and for families who join Lifetime's program, we do webinars like this live twice a month, where we sometimes we have Q&A, sometimes we have a special guest. Recently, we had someone who talked about prenatal drug exposure, so that was really interesting. So, just one of the things that we do, and then periodically we do webinars like this that are open to the public, really to help increase awareness about modern open adoption, and also just share a little bit about what families can expect with domestic adoption.
Yes. And before we dive into our topic for the day, I want to let you know if you're brand new to Lifetime and haven't filled out an application, Lifetime is one of the few agencies in the nation that does not charge an application fee. So you are welcome to explore things with us, take that next step and fill out the application absolutely for free, and it does not commit you to anything. You can find the application on our main website at lifetimeadoption.com, more specifically, lifetimeadoption.com/apply. Now, throughout our webinar tonight, if you do find yourself with some specific questions about your scenario, maybe you want to go deeper into a certain topic than our time will allow, you are welcome to call us, text us, or email us. Of course, you can initiate a text right there at lifetimeadoption.com. A window will pop up asking if you want to text with us, so you can certainly do that. You can call us at 727-493-0933, and we are generally available for adoptive parent support until 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, with, of course, after hours and 24/7 support for birth moms and our adoptive parents that are matched and traveling and everything. You
Mhm.
can also send me an email, kim@lifetimeadoption.com, if you want to receive the basic information that we provide when new families contact us and say, hey, can you send me your information about your agency? So then I'll send out all the details with more specific information about lifetime adoption. But today we are going to be talking about the process, and this is really from the standpoint of being brand new and maybe just putting into Google, how do I adopt? So
Mhm.
I think it's a great place to start.
Mhm. Absolutely. So let's jump right in here, Kim. Um, I think a great place to start is just with that reassurance. And this has been one of the things that when I've been with Lifetime 22 years, and even back then, this was a saying that our founder, Marty Caldwell, would reassure families with, and that is that there is a baby for you. She believes strongly that for every family who wants to be parents and embrace a child, that God has a baby for them. And it's just one of those kind of overriding values we have. And you'll hear more about our values as we go really through the program today. At Lifetime, we are birth mother focused, and we believe that's vital for successful adoptions. I would say one of the things that probably makes Lifetime quite unique is our heart for birth mothers, because without them, adoption simply doesn't take place today. It was a lot different in the 50s and 60s, but today, birth mothers are making those choices, and we really want to, reassure them, be there for them, and that's why Kim mentioned just a minute ago we have that round the clock support for them. With that, it's good to understand that modern open adoption is now what is happening in domestic adoption. That's something that families oftentimes, when they start the process, they don't have a full awareness of. They think there might be opportunities to choose closed or semi-open adoption. And while those things do happen today, It's very, very rare, and usually it is because of the birth mother's request rather than a family's preference. And Lifetime really grew from Marty's own adoption. She was pursuing adoption personally, and she designed Lifetime to be that program that she wished she had now almost 40 years ago.
And Heather, I want to also chime in here that we have a wonderful webinar called Modern Christian Adoption.
Mhm.
And you can find that on our website at adoptionwebinar.com or email me, Kim at lifetimeadoption.com, and request that webinar link to Modern Christian Adoption. And we really talk more about adoption from a birth mom point of view, modern adoption and open adoption. And I believe that is one of the best webinars you can listen to if you're new to adoption and feeling a little apprehensive about
Mhm.
modern and open adoption, which are
Right.
essentially the same thing now.
Right.
I also want to chime in that if you are attending live on our webinar, you are welcome to add your comments and questions in the question box. We love your feedback and we'd love for you to be a part of our conversation. That is one of the benefits of being live on the webinar. So we applaud you and appreciate you for choosing to be with us live tonight.
Definitely. So let's just kind of talk a little bit here, Kim, about the transition, because many family transition from infertility. Many families have pursued some type of fertility treatment, or maybe they're turning to adoption because they don't want to pursue in vitro or something like that, or maybe it just simply isn't a possibility. I think it's really good for families to take that time to grieve that loss. It's a real loss, understanding that you aren't going to be able to carry or have a biological baby. That is what brings the great majority of families to adoption, and it's not adoption isn't really a substitute for pregnancy. It definitely is another way to build a family, but it's good to take just a little bit of time to pause and realize that it is a different journey. It just those are sometimes wounds that we don't, I think, realize until we sit and spend some time there. And so it's good to really ensure that that's where you are, what's taken place.
Heather, I think that for couples or singles hoping to adopt, it's
Mhm.
good to get some support around you. See a counselor maybe
Mhm.
for a few sessions to just help talk you through this together and as a couple and as individuals, because counselors are really great at helping people kind of navigate feelings and kind of bring up feelings that you may encounter so that you're not caught off guard. So counseling is always a great option during this time.
Yeah.
Also, just remember that spouses, a husband and a wife may process things a little differently. It may look
Mm.
differently, like a wife may be talking about this nonstop with her mom, her sister, her friends,
Mhm.
and trying to talk about it nonstop with her husband as well. And he's meanwhile perhaps processing it very differently, like spending extra time in the yard, maybe going on long hikes alone in the forest,
Mhm.
maybe buddy buddy with his friends, but not really talking about it because perhaps he's processing it differently. So we all kind of have our own timing. And it's definitely important to recognize that infertility doesn't mean that you're not going to be parents because
Mhm.
God has provided adoption as a path.
You bet. You bet. So, Kim, why don't you share a little bit about this, identifying your adoption needs?
Yes, so here today on our webinar, we're talking about infant adoption. But sometimes adoptive parents have different reasons for adopting, different ideas of how it will go. Now, Heather, I've heard you many times over the years say that flexibility is key when adopting.
That's right.
But you still are going to have some basic adoption needs or adoption preferences.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we want to find out, hey, are you looking for a baby? Are you looking for a child of any race or a specific race? Are you hoping only to adopt sibling groups, maybe from the foster system? Are you, maybe hoping for a child that has special needs? Sometimes we have families that reach out
Mhm.
that are only hoping to grow their family by adopting a child with Down syndrome. Maybe they've already
Right.
done so and want to do that again. Or are you maybe specifying gender? Now, that's not common and it is really a barrier to adoption, especially in private domestic adoption, which is adopting here in the US from a birth mother that is choosing you. But perhaps if you go to international adoption, then you could perhaps
Mhm.
choose a gender, adopt an older child. So identifying your needs and considering your adoption preferences kind of go hand in hand. And we can talk more about that too when you fill out your application and perhaps we have a phone or video conference.
And that was one of the things I was going to mention was eh, prior to ever beginning with Lifetime, families have a one-on-one phone conference with Kim or one of our other adoption coordinators where we really can go a little deeper into those preference aspects because it can go beyond race and age of a child. It can include substance exposure. It can include the degree of special needs, if any. We really can explore that and answer more questions because inevitably a lot of questions come up around that.
And
And go ahead.
Heather, can I say too that we've mentioned special needs a couple of times pretty quickly
Hmm.
here. I want to
Yeah,
assure adoptive parents that special needs are actually very rare in
they
our
are.
adoptions. Out
Hmm.
of over 100 adoptions a year, a very small handful will have special needs. So most babies born in the US are completely healthy, and
Hmm.
that is the typical case here at Lifetime. A
Totally
healthy
safe.
baby at the hospital, and that's our traditional scenario.
Yes, yes. And and then too, it's good to spend some time with your own limitations.
Yes.
Maybe you're a little hesitant because of your age. That's something definitely that you would talk to Kim or a coordinator about because there's a lot of different limitations that we can help you maybe navigate through or evaluate based on your individual scenario.
Right. When you fill out Lifetime's application, we're going to ask lots of different questions and really you can fill it out within about 15, maybe 20 minutes. Should be able to
Hmm.
complete that easily. But when you answer the questions about yourself, it's very important to be completely honest with that in answering those because we're going to be able to let you know if we see any concerns in our ability to be successful.
Hmm.
So there's not a set list of criteria in order for us to feel like we can help you or that we're saying, oh, they don't meet this requirement, so we can't help them.
Hmm.
That does not exist here at Lifetime. What we do is we consider your application as a whole. And it's pretty normal for a couple to maybe think that something's a limitation that isn't.
Right.
And sometimes families have a limitation they didn't realize was going to be a limitation, such as their age or family structure or reasons for adopting can even be limiting.
Right.
And certainly your adoption preferences can be a limitation if it's too specific.
Right, right. So let's kind of knock down some adoption myths because I think in doing that, we really cover a lot of ground in helping you understand a little more about modern adoption and especially domestic adoption. And I think one of the first myths we hear quite a bit is with open adoption, a birth mother will try to get her child back. That's often used as a reason for being fearful about open adoption. And just as a side note, I love this photo. This is adoptive mom on the left, birth mother on the right, and then the child she chose as an infant. She plays with the adoptive mother and her husband, and this is during one of their annual visits. Um, and it's good to understand that birth mothers today are choosing open adoption because they are choosing the parents for their child and they want to stay in touch. Do all birth parents have visits that look like this? No, they don't. But many of them want to have a connection. And I think it's normal for parents coming into adoption to be fearful of that, to think, well, won't this confuse the child? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But, or think that this is a mother trying to exert control over this child. But what I want to reassure you is that today, women have the ability to parent. The government provides money, provides food, provides housing. Women, many of them are choosing adoption even though their family is saying, no, we'll help you parent. You don't have to do this. Sometimes social workers at the hospital might say the same thing to a mother. You don't have to do this. And many of the women we work with have the tools to parent. They are not looking at adoption as something anyone is forcing them to do. They are choosing adoption because they are trying to provide more for their child than they can. And it's a very conscious thought. It's a conscious choice, and they are not they are not going to try and get their children back. Um, Another
Heather,
myth is that birth. Oh, go ahead,
so
Kim.
there is a time frame in every state for a birth mother to be able to decide to parent. And in most states, it's anywhere from 0 to 30 days. So adoptive parents can rest assured that when you use the right legal services for your adoption, that that is going to be resolved in those early weeks. So there should be no fear or concern about, 5 years later type of story. We
No,
see that a lot in movies, but it's just not reality if
right.
the process has been followed.
And with that too, I would just say when you think about a connection through open adoption, whether it's visits or through letters and pictures or connections via, social media or email, really it's the birth mother's relationship with you, the adoptive parents. You can't have much of a two-way, you know, uh, relationship with a baby who can't communicate well. So really what it is building the relationship between you and the birth mother where you both share a love for the child. So, moving on here to our next myth that birth mothers are homeless and addicts. And the reality is that some are. Some are homeless, some are addicts, some are both. But most just are alone. They may have burned their bridges with their parents, with their friends, with people who supported them. And whatever their situation, they want a different life for their child.
And Heather, we've had birth mothers that have shared with us that they just don't have people in their life that are healthy enough for them to want to have around their child. So even though they know that their mom and their aunt and their cousins would help them, they look at the lifestyle and the values and they don't want that influence on their child. So then they come to our website or they call us on our hotline and they say, "Can you help me find a family?" Or they start browsing through profiles of families on lifetimeadoption.com or one of our other sites, or the videos
Hmm.
that we share of our families on YouTube. You
Hmm.
can go right now to YouTube and look at video profiles of Lifetime's adoptive parents, little short videos, no identifying information. But these are women that are wanting those kinds of families for their child. And so they're wanting to choose a whole different legacy and fresh start for this baby.
Hmm. And I just want to touch on, briefly, even moms who are homeless or addicts, we work with them. They are, just as Kim said, reaching out for those same services. It is much easier for them just to have the baby and leave it at the hospital, and then it goes into, foster care and eventually will be adopted. But the reality is those are still women who care enough about their baby to make these pre-thought out, pre-planned adoptions.
Mhm.
So next, birth moms or teens that made a mistake with their boyfriends. We get this one a lot. And I think that is what was true in the 50s and 60s when women were kind of sent off to have their babies and then, expected to come back home and have basically forgotten about it. But that is not who's making adoption plans today. Those moms actually have the ability to parent because the stigma with being unmarried and pregnant is no longer a part of our culture. Today, most birth mothers are in their mid 20s. Often they have other children, not always, but often they do. They may not have much help parenting the children they have from the father or fathers. I mentioned burning bridges. Many of them have burned bridges with their mom, or their mom is not in a position to help them any more than she is helping them now.
I love that you
Um,
mentioned that, Heather, because I often have adoptive parents ask, just wanting to know, like, if she's already parenting, why is she choosing adoption for this child?
mhm,
And how can I help my child understand that too? But really, there's more to the story. She's probably stretched pretty thin with the last baby,
right,
and now has decided to let this baby be adopted by a family who's
right.
longing for a child and has all the resources and support and stability that she feels is ideal for a child.
Right. In fact, Kim, I was on call here a couple weekends ago, and I talked to a mom that called in. She had a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old at home, and
Mhm.
she said, "There is no way I can handle one more."
Yeah.
And that's just her reality, and so that's the reason she's choosing adoption.
And this isn't just new mom overwhelm. This isn't just
Right.
a bad week. This is
No.
a whole cluster of dynamics that are kind of a perfect storm that are bringing her heart and mind to resolve things for this baby through adoption.
Hmm. Hmm. Another myth is that birth mothers don't love their children. And I think that is probably one of the things that is furthest from the truth. Birth
Mhm.
mothers choose adoption out of great love for their child, and in fact, that is one of the biggest fears we hear from birth mothers, is that they are afraid if they choose adoption their child will hate them.
Mhm.
And so that's one of the things we talk about with them. Just like we talk with adoptive parents about, we want to be sure that that birth mother is always um, kept as part of the child's story, even if the future contact, maybe it falls off simply because she stops responding to you. That's okay. It doesn't mean she doesn't love or think about her child. She doesn't love and care about you and is grateful for you. It's just that sometimes relationships ebb and flow, but at the end of the day, mothers are choosing adoption out of love for their child.
Mhm.
Another myth is that adoption frauds and scams are common. And I will say, for families who are not using a reputable or experienced agency, they may see a lot more adoption frauds or scams. And you may never have heard of adoption frauds or scams before, but these are often when women pose as someone who is wanting to place a baby. Sometimes they request money, and that's a big one. Other times they don't request money, and it is emotional scams. And those can be some of the hardest ones because you've believed, maybe this woman's confided in you. You felt like you knew her and there was a trust level there, and then she disappears. And you find out she was never pregnant. So, families, in fact, many families have come to Lifetime after experiencing an adoption fraud or adoption scam because they realize the value of an adoption agency that has more tools and resources and certainly more experience in screening birth mothers.
As we support birth moms, we are also guiding them through a gentle screening process that is not only
Hmm.
their self assessment and giving them the tools and asking them the questions that are very real questions. What would it take for you to decide to parent? What would need to change? What would your life be like? What would the child's life be like in parenting and versus adoption? So we guide them through. Have you talked with your friends and family and, your parents about adoption? There are lots of questions that we guide birth moms through. Um, and we also request medical records. We need specific documents from the birth mom and her doctor's office, and someone who is not legitimate. one may not be able to produce those, and even if they do, we have experience in detecting whether or not those are legitimate. And we
Mhm.
also know that women who are just trying to get money, get a quick dollar, are not likely to go through this whole process with us
Mhm.
before they can
Mhm.
match with one of our families because these are their prerequisites. We're here to
Mhm.
support them, help them self assess, and also check for any red flags along the way.
Right. Right. Um, I'm rescuing a child. This
Mhm.
is, I will say, there are children in this world who truly need rescuing. Um, Typically, you are not going to find those in domestic newborn adoption. Those are typically children who are waiting to be adopted internationally or in the foster system. With domestic adoption, families, birth mothers are making these thoughtful adoption plans, and just as she and her baby is an answer to your prayers, you are an answer to hers too, not just for loving and caring about her baby and hopefully, truly caring about her, but also for committing to stay in touch and keep her a part of her child's life. Again,
Mhm.
not in a co-parenting type of way, but in an open adoption that has been defined and with healthy boundaries for everyone.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit. We've talked about open adoption. Many times that brings up the question, well, my hesitancy is that my child will be confused. If we talk about not just the adoption, but if they see or hear from their birth mother, so we have a few tips here on just to put some of these thoughts into your mind now so that this whole idea of modern open adoption starts to kind of take shape a little bit. And our first is about using positive adoption language.
This is actually one of my favorite tools of all time. And I was so interested in this when I first came to Lifetime Adoption. Um, I had never heard of positive adoption language. You can actually Google image for positive adoption language, and lots of great tools are going to come up for you. I actually wrote out a little example, Heather, and I've never done this before, so I hope it goes well. But here's an
Sure.
example of negative adoption language that can be hurtful and confusing. So listen
Mhm.
carefully. Your real mom gave you up, and since we couldn't have our own children, you became our adopted child. So that's negative adoption language. And I think this is what parents are struggling with when they say, like,
Mhm.
how am I going to do this? And how confusing is this going to be? So here's an example when we translate that into positive adoption language. So listen carefully. Your tummy mommy made an adoption plan for you, and we were unable to have biological children. So God answered our prayers, and you became our child. So you can
Mhm.
see there the difference. It's all truth in the positive adoption language. She made an adoption plan. She's your tummy mommy. She grew in in her tummy. You grew in her tummy
Mhm.
while you
Mhm.
also grew in our hearts. And we
Mhm.
all came together as the answer to each other's prayers. We were unable to have biological children. There is no such thing as our real child and our unreal or fake child, right?
Mhm.
Our
Mhm.
biological child is just as real as our child that comes to us through adoption. We also don't want to constantly refer to our child as our adopted child. For example, maybe families in the
Right.
60s would introduce their family and say, "Well, these are our children
Right.
and this is our adoptive daughter." How
Yeah.
hurtful, how othered must that child feel growing up? So you want to really start now with becoming familiar with and comfortable with positive adoption language and spread it around in your conversations as well so
That's
people
right.
can catch on and get with the program here. But when we
Right.
use positive adoption language, it really makes it a lot easier to share about adoption with your baby from birth.
Right. And Kim, one of the best things I ever heard about that was about if somebody is adopted or was adopted.
Mhm.
And it was you were adopted. Your adoption happened once. It's not a state of being.
Mhm.
And so it's just even that little difference between was and is. So great. That's a great example. Thanks for sharing that.
Mhm.
Another thing here is sharing your child's adoption story from birth. And one of the beautiful things we provide families, just as a little gift when they adopt through lifetime, is we give them a child picture book that explains adoption to a child. They have board books. They have beautiful books that start telling help parents tell the story from the very beginning. And that's for a few reasons. Number one is you're being honest with your child from the beginning. You don't ever want to wait. I know when I was young, parents waited till a child was old enough to understand. But when the child is old enough to understand, they also understand that everything they've believed up until now was a lie. So the professionals are the ones who tell us we need to talk about this from the beginning. The other reason is because it helps you as adoptive parents get comfortable sharing that story, using those words, using the positive words Kim demonstrated, not having those moments that are, I don't know what to say. You'll have those moments as parents, we all do, but with adoption, you will have well practiced that telling that story by the time the child is old enough to understand. And guess what? You don't ever have to sit down and have that conversation. Your child will always know how they became a part of your family. And just to just broaden this idea a little bit, this is happening not just in adoption today, but when you think about embryo adoption, when you think about insemination, where you think about donor eggs, donor sperm, surrogates. There's families being built a lot of ways besides just adoption that have their own and unique stories. And no matter how a family comes together, really, the professionals are telling us we need to share our children's story from the beginning so they don't grow up believing something that simply isn't true, didn't ever happen.
And I love how our adoptive parents often share with us that their child's favorite bedtime story is their own adoption story. And a
Yeah.
typical adoption story that you can most likely expect to share with your child is we were longing for a child and we prayed to God for him to bring us a baby. And we signed up with the adoption agency. And one day we got the call and we found out that you were being born, let's say in Texas.
Hmm.
So we grabbed our bags, we ran off to the airport, we flew to Texas, we drove to the hospital, we went in the elevator, and we walked down the hall, and there we met you for the first time. And your tummy mommy said, "Come in. I'm so excited for you to meet your baby."
Hmm.
And of
And
course,
then
you're going to fill it in with your own details, right? But isn't
sure.
that such a beautiful story that's easy to share with even a young infant toddler?
And then as they get older and they have a connection through you with their birth mother, it fills in those blanks. They
Hmm.
don't they won't fantasize that, their mother's a princess in a castle and she's not being let out. She's trapped. No, it's real. It's Sarah. That's what we call her. We call her Sarah. It's Sarah. Sarah's my tummy mommy. And
Hmm.
and it's this reality, and children grow up knowing who they are.
Hmm.
One really good tip here is use discretion when sharing the details of your child's story, even with your family members. And as you get further in the process, I'm sure you'll learn a little more about that. But it's just good to keep in mind that the details of your child's life, adoption, birth mother, perhaps if the birth mother was using drugs, you know, maybe the birth mother, had other challenges or uh, anything. Just use discretion because you never want something you share or confide to come back to your child um, in a way that wasn't through you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So let's talk a little bit. I love this picture. This is Marty Caldwell. This is Lifetime's founder. Um, about adoption professionals, because families can't do this on their own. They need professionals. So Kim, I'll go ahead and let you take over here for a moment.
Mhm. Yes. So when you choose an adoption professional, there are many things that you're looking for. You want to make sure that your values align. So if you are
Mhm.
trying to adopt a baby domestically, of course, that's really the only way to adopt a baby is private
Mhm.
domestic adoption. It's the only certain path to private domestic adoption successfully. You want to choose an agency that aligns with your values, such as, do you care that the birth mom has support? What does that look like for you? What's going to meet your standards? For example, here at Lifetime, the 24/7 support, the gentle screening and support process that helps her self assess whether or not adoption really is necessary and the right path, and that she gets to pick the family and create a hospital plan, create an adoption plan with the family she's choosing, create an open adoption plan. Are these things that are important to you? And is the agency you are considering, do they share with you about that in detail? What does their support look like for birth moms? Of course, you want to work with an adoption agency that actually works with birth moms. It's challenging and expensive and risky if your adoption professional doesn't work directly with birth moms. Here at Lifetime, we work directly with birth moms. We have all of our own outreach in place. So, we are hearing from new birth moms every day. We have multiple new intakes every day of the week, rain or shine, holiday or not. And that's just really important to know. Was the last time an adoption agency heard from a birth mom like 3 weeks ago? How many adoptions are they completing? What's their reclaim rate? How often do their adoptions fail? Lifetime's reclaim rate is really low. It's about 4 to 6%. So adoptive parents really like that. And you can see how all of these dots are connected. The support we provide for birth moms, as well as, we haven't even talked about, in depth, the support we provide for parents. But, all of that education and support leads to more stability in your adoption for you and birth mom and baby. So you want to make sure that you are working with an adoption professional that you align with and that is equipped to actually meet your needs and have good communication with you. Are they patient with you when you have a question? Or are they impatient? You feel rushed off the phone. We hear that so much when families reach out to us. Maybe they just need like 10, 20 minutes with, for questions, and they're finally getting a chance to talk to someone more than Googling, which is very conflicting and confusing. Or maybe they're not getting calls back from other agencies. They've left a voicemail and are still waiting to hear back. Or maybe when they did get someone on the phone, it seemed like they were not really the priority, and they only had like a couple minutes to blurt out a couple questions and just get the short answer. You want to work with someone who's
Mhm.
really going to meet you where you are and walk with you. And that's what we're known for here at Lifetime, is our step-by-step guidance. We also work nationwide. So this is part of, what's your expectation? Are you hoping to just drive up the street and adopt locally from the hospital right near you? And so you want to work with a small local agency? Or with Lifetime, we work nationwide. And I think that's something that's very important to adoptive parents, because they know that casting the widest net is what's best for their adoption, if they want to be chosen by a birth mother in a timely manner. Because on top of that, everyone's got their adoption preferences. You're going to have your set of adoption criteria or preferences, and so will a birth mom and what she's looking for in a family. So when choose an adoption professional, you want to think about, is this local, regional, or nationwide?
Mhm. Mhm.
And with Lifetime, because we are nationwide, when it comes to different adoption professionals you're going to need, such as a home study provider or attorney, we have those referrals for you. So we'll put you in contact and give you that information to reach out to the social workers that we recommend in your area, or attorneys across the country, depending on what state the birth mom is in, that are best suited for your specific case. Like, if you're in Florida and the birth mom is in, let's say, California or Texas or Mississippi, you might not know an adoption attorney. You might not have researched that, and we don't expect you to. In fact, that's a lot of work that's unnecessary.
Right,
So once we get the match in place, we can make that referral for you so you can be rest assured that you are working with a great team of adoption professionals that we've had positive experiences with over the years. And I think that's just such a comfort for adoptive parents. And let's say you want to choose a home study provider on your own. That's totally fine. You can totally do that. You don't need to, but you want to make sure that she's got room in her caseload for you. Home studies should
right,
take about 2 to 3 months. But if she's saying 6 months, maybe she doesn't have space to get your home study done in a timely manner. And we certainly don't want that to cause an unnecessary delay.
right. Definitely. And, one more tip we'll throw in here, and that is ensure whatever adoption professional you work with that they have a detailed agreement that you can have ahead of time and you can have time to review and that you can review with an attorney if you wish. And be
Mhm.
sure you feel comfortable with your adoption professional. Um, that is probably one of the most important things because it just, it's our founder, Marty Caldwell, likes to say, most people put more time and effort into choosing a contractor to help build or add on their home than they do on their adoption professional. You really want to, spend that time with whoever you're choosing. Ask those questions. It's absolutely okay. Um, and so that's one of the reasons, like I say, here at Lifetime, we do these webinars. We do them once a month, actually, on different topics or just Q&As, because we want to be sure that families who might be considering Lifetime get to know us and get to know what is important to us, what we value, and certainly, education I think is a big one for us as well.
Mhm.
So let's jump in here. You mentioned home studies, Kim, and really a home study, if you're not familiar, it's more of a people study, and that is one of the things that you will do to be to to start to be paper ready. But really, the first thing is to choose and sign an agreement with an adoption professional. And at Lifetime, then we will be more than happy, as Kim said, to give you a referral to a home study provider. And then as you work through to become paper ready, just simply means you are 100% ready to move forward if a birth mother chooses you. We will then help you step by step through creating a profile both online and digitally for birth mothers to see. If you want more of the hand holding experience, we can do that for you. But either way, you are guided step by step with a coordinator who specializes in your, helping families create those materials for birth mothers to see. One of the trademarks of Lifetime's program is that our we call them profiles, whether it's online or digital or in print. Our profiles are always emerging based on birth mother feedback. Birth mothers, uh, years ago, in fact, fun fact, that was my first job at Lifetime 22 years ago, was I helped families with their profiles. And the things that we included then, sure, we still include a lot of those same things now, but we include different things now simply because times have changed. What birth mothers are looking for or looking at has changed, especially with the advent of social media and just really a more open form of communication around the world, not just here. So, that I think to me is really important that, you know, there are a lot of people out there who have companies that say, "Oh yeah, we'll make your adoption profile for you. Ours are successful," but many times they aren't even working with birth mothers. They simply have a graphic design program. So that's one place I would caution families. You shouldn't ever have to pay extra to have the service of somebody doing that. Your adoption professional should provide guidance and help based on birth mothers, and that's, like I say, that is one of the cornerstones here, because families could create something, but if it's not what birth mothers are looking for, then it may never work, if that makes sense. Keep in mind, birth mothers are seeing and choosing families based on their photos, their words, their videos, the things they say and show about themselves. And Lifetime's recipe for success is one that is very important to us. And because we do put so much value on that birth mother feedback and incorporating that as we move forward for every family.
Mhm. I want to also point out that the profile is not, at least with Lifetime, we do not have you put your identifying information in there, such as your last names
Right.
or phone number. So when a birth mom reads that profile that we've provided, she contacts Lifetime. And then once she's met her requirements, that's when we call you and let you know all about her.
Hmm.
So there's definitely a process to this. In fact, when you fill out your application, and if Lifetime is able to explore things further and schedule a phone or video conference, we have a whole video that talks about the in-depth process. It talks more in depth about the process of, being a Lifetime family and what you can
Hmm.
expect.
Hmm. Absolutely. So we had a question that came in, and it really kind of goes with our next topic, which is funding your adoption, because that often is something that families ask. How do we fund this? Where do the funds come from? Because much like IVF, there may not be much coverage or assistance for through normal health insurance, those types of things. Um, the question was talking about the financial requirements. So we'll get to that in a minute, but first we're going to talk about how to find money, and there's a variety of ways. And when you speak with a coordinator, she can kind of go into more detail and even email you. I know Kim can email you information about this. But
Mhm.
families fund their adoptions through savings, through fundraising, contributions from friends or family members. Many employers now offer adoption benefits. You can just ask your HR department if your company provides adoption benefits, and sometimes these are. I've been amazed the last few years at how much. It used to be $20,000 was an amount we've seen much higher than $20,000 that employers are providing to offset the cost of adoption for their employees. There's financing options, loans, home equity lines of credit. Um, One of the best things I know about is actually if you have 401k, you can borrow from your 401k, and as you pay it back, the interest goes to yourself. So it's not pulling money out of a 401k, so it does not create a tax event. But what it is simply borrowing against that, and then, like I say, as you pay it back, the interest goes right back to your 401k.
Mhm.
There is a federal tax credit for adoption that I believe is around $15,000 now,
Mhm.
and many other ways, even hidden ways that people find um, assistance. Yes, there are some grants out there, but I always encourage families don't rely on the grants because there's always more people who apply than receive them. It's definitely worthwhile to apply, but look at some of the other opportunities first if you need to explore the financing aspect of it. Lifetime also has a payment plan that helps families get started without having a huge chunk. We let you break it up. It's interest free. I know Kim or any of our coordinators can share more about that with you as well. The total cost for adoption here at Lifetime is averages around 45 to $50,000, and that includes your home study, the agency fee, legal expenses, and birth mother expenses.
And when
Certainly,
we
go ahead.
speak, you're probably about to say this, but
Uh-huh.
when we speak with you, we'll let you know if there are any if there's anything about your state where maybe the average cost of a home study in your state is higher. than other states, or maybe legal expenses are going to be higher because of requirements in your state. We're going to let you know that if that's something that stands out about your state. Most families can adopt within this range that Heather shared, but we do ask families budget a little higher than that just in case, because this is, kind of an average range. Most families'
Mhm,
total adoption spending from start to finish lands somewhere in this little range here.
mhm, mhm. And one thing I want to just mention on this is that you know we mentioned birth mother expenses here. At Lifetime, families can set their budget for birth mother expenses. And what birth mother expenses are is help for the birth mother with perhaps rent, transportation to and from the doctor, food, her phone bill. Um, it could be medical expenses if she is not eligible for Medicaid, or perhaps she's a dependent on a parent's insurance policy. It may not cover pregnancy for a dependent. It can be a variety of things. It can be help with rent and food while she's recovering from her pregnancy. Families set that budget. Um, right now our average is around $5,000 for birth mother expenses. But when I say that, it's good to know some birth mothers have none, some birth mothers have more. So an average that falls into that total is around $5,000.
Yes, and there are many active adoption professionals out there in our country today that are informing adoptive parents they need to be prepared to spend 10, 20,000, or even more on just the birth mother's living expenses. And
Mm-mm.
we're just able to help screen and support the birth mom and really get down to the things that are going to be hold the biggest value in stabilizing things for the birth mom and your adoption, such as stabilizing her housing by supplementing some of that rent payment, which then goes from you to the attorney directly to the rental office. So at Lifetime, not only are our expenses really low when it comes to the overall cost, but it's very low risk because you're not actually giving birth mom money directly. So that's the
Mhm.
safest way. And it also helps us avoid frauds and scams, because imagine if you're just trying to get money and you're not sincerely planning to make, this adoption plan, that's not your intention. You probably want to get money sent directly to you, wired to you, deposited into your account, gift cards sent to you with very little effort on your end, little to no paper trail.
Mhm.
So that's kind of a hallmark of frauds and scams. And she might be in a hurry and unable to really spend the time doing paperwork is another kind of
Right.
hallmark of a fraud. Yeah.
And I just want to step back a little bit here, because Kim, you touched on something very important, and you said that you may see other adoptions or hear of other adoptions where families, maybe they lost 15, $20,000. Those are often in birth mother expenses. And you need to understand that birth mother expenses, you cannot exchange cash for a child. That's trafficking. That's selling your baby, and that is illegal everywhere. Um, so the birth mother expense budget, that's one of the things Lifetime really strives to do for our adoptive families is we try to protect your heart from frauds and scams, and we try to protect your wallet, not just necessarily from frauds or scams, but from loss.
Hmm.
Because any monies given to a birth mother in the form of expenses, again, they're not. You don't necessarily get them back if she changes her mind. And birth mothers, occasionally they will change their mind. So it's just one of those things to keep in mind. And if you see opportunities to adopt that say something like, the birth mother expenses are 6 months of living expenses at $3,000 a month for $18,000, if you are considering situations like that, please know that that $18,000 is 100% at risk. That's why at Lifetime we provide help and support to birth mothers through maternity clothes. We often give bus passes. We will send food, trying to help them get to a stable place. So they're making a decision from a place of stability, not a place of crisis. Because often when you see the high expenses, that can be a birth mother who was, you know, suddenly going into this and an adoption professional that may not necessarily be someone I might consider a real professional, if you know what I mean, and just trying to put something together, hoping that the money will make her sign when it's just not the case. Women need to make the decision for adoption from a place of safety and stability with the understanding the magnitude of what they're doing. So that's why, like I say, I shared a little more on expenses just so that because I believe in the value of education through this process. And it's just really, really important because it breaks my heart when I see people posting online, oh, I just lost this amount. Well, it's because you didn't have a solid professional vetting the birth mother and ensuring that she was in the right state of mind to be making these decisions. So it's just really important.
And we can talk more about this too whenever
Mhm.
you reach out to Lifetime and we're able to have these conversations with you directly. I do want to just add one thing that adoptive parents often wonder about when it comes to the budget. What about the birth mother's medical expenses? So when we
Ah,
say birth mom expenses, we're including her medical expenses in
yes.
that. And believe it or not, our average is, like Heather said, 5,000 in total. So a birth mom might just need help with some copays, but
Mhm.
most likely she's got government assistance. So we see
Mhm.
little to no medical cost in our adoptions. If
Mhm.
she's not signed up for it when she reaches out to us, then we can guide her and encourage her to do that so that there is little to no medical cost in
Mhm.
our adoptions.
Mhm. So I know we're nearing the top of the hour,
Yes.
and some of you have asked questions that we haven't been able to get to, but please know we'll give Kim's information so you can reach out, or she may reach out to you and answer those. So Kim, what's the family's next steps here?
Yes, you can complete Lifetime's free application at lifetimeadoption.com. And that should only take about 15-20 minutes. It'll ask you for a recent photo of you, so you can upload that at the end. And then you'll hear back from Lifetime. You can expect to maybe get a text or an email within minutes letting you know automatically that it did go through successfully through the internet and into our system. And then on the following business day, Monday through Friday, our applications coordinator will be reaching out to you personally to let you know she's got your application and maybe she needs more information from you. So just be sure to keep an eye on your phone, text, and email. Make sure your voicemail is set up. Make sure that your voicemail box is not full. And when we text you, that's going to be most likely a real text that we're actually sending to you, not a bot. So if you reply to it, it definitely comes to us and we can have conversations there. So that's what you can expect. You should complete Lifetime's free online application. And we get a lot of questions from adoptive parents saying, should I apply if? And I will say, most likely, any way that you're going to finish that sentence, we're going to say yes so that we can consider your application as a whole because we're going to have lots of questions on that application that really help paint the whole picture of what you're open to and what a birth mom might be finding in you that she's hoping to find for her baby. So we want to view your application as a whole. So just be sure to fill that out and you can add as much information in there as you'd like. Some of those questions are a little bit more open-ended. We want to give you that opportunity for us to get to know you as you're getting to know us as well. Be sure to stay in touch with your coordinator. The best way to make sure that your adoption process is moving forward is to constantly volley the ball back into the other person's court. So when someone asks you for something, bat that ball right back. Just hit it right up over the net and get it back into their court so that you're just waiting on hearing back from them. And a reputable, experienced adoption professional that values you should be responding to you in a timely manner so that you can avoid unnecessary delay. But stay in touch with your coordinator through the application process, as well as once you're working with us. We have monthly check ins, we have our twice a month live webinars for our families, we have an open door policy, and every coordinator here has a calendar where you can schedule time if that makes things easier.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
keep taking steps every day closer to the baby God has for you because this entire process, hopefully, we've made it a little less confusing, a little less overwhelming. It's made up of all the little baby steps, pun intended, that will bring you closer to the baby that God has for you. And it might seem uncertain and scary and overwhelming right now, but we have helped thousands of families over the years, and we're here to help you find out if we could be a great partner for you to help you grow your family as well. My email is kim@lifetimeadoption.com. Please send me your questions. Let me know if you'd like to request any of the things I've mentioned here. If you need financial information, if you need the entire detailed budget that we ask families to plan for, you want general information, you want specific webinars, maybe you want that modern Christian adoption webinar so you can learn more about open adoption. And just because it's a very interesting topic, let me know. My email is kim@lifetimeadoption.com. We've got our phone number 727-493-0933. You can call or text us. You can also go on to lifetimeadoption.com, read our blog, frequently asked questions, fill out your application, view family profiles, view little snippets of information about placing parents, birth moms. We share
Sure.
about them at lifetimeadoption.com. So we want to
Mhm.
connect with you and help you keep taking all those baby steps forward to the child that God has for you.